Welcome to Merrill Group Construction's Silica Training Module. Visit us at www.merrillgroup.com. For the last 40 years the silica standard has remained the same. OSHA began enforcement of the Respirable crystalline silica standard for construction on September 23, 2017. Silica, often referred to as quartz, is a very common mineral. It is found in many materials common on construction sites, including soil, sand, concrete, masonry, rock, granite, and landscaping materials. The dust created by cutting, grinding, drilling or otherwise disturbing these materials can contain crystalline silica particles. These dust particles are very small. You cannot see them. This respirable silica dust causes lung disease and lung cancer. It only takes a very small amount of airborne silica dust to create a health hazard. A worker's chance of becoming ill from exposure to silica dust depends on the tasks performed, the amount of dust they are exposed to, and the frequency of the exposures. Each exposure to silica adds into the total load of silica in the lungs. In other words, each exposure adds to the lung damage. Some workers become ill after many years of low exposure levels, while other workers who perform less frequent but high exposure tasks can become ill with a lower cumulative exposure. Why? Because the high exposure to silica dust overwhelms the lungs' defenses and most of the dust settles deep into the lungs where it does the most damage. It is important to remember that repeated exposures to silica add up to a total dose that can cause serious lung disease. The kinds of exposures we see in high exposure tasks, such as sandblasting and tuck pointing, over time can give a worker enough exposure to put him or her at serious risk for silica-related illness. Approximately 2.3 million workers in the U.S. are exposed to silica. Each year, hundreds of workers die from illnesses caused by breathing in silica and thousands more become ill. Any construction worker who performs one or more of the following tasks with any of the materials listed below is at risk of being exposed to hazardous levels silica dust. If you work close by someone generating silica dust, you may be at risk. Silica exposure that may be present on Merrill Group job sites includes cutting ceramic and porcelain tile, concrete, clay brick, masonry blocks, natural stone, clay and concrete roof tile, and cutting asphalt. Also, demolishing, disturbing, drilling, earth moving, grinding, jackhammering, mixing, polishing, roofing, sacking, patching, sanding, scraping, and sweeping or cleaning up. Construction material: asphalt, for paving, brick, cement, concrete, concrete block, drywall, fiber cement products, grout, gunite, shotcrete, mortar, paints containing silica, plaster, refractory mortar, castables, refractory units, rock, roofing tiles and pavers, sand, soil, fill dirt and topsoil, stone, including granite, limestone, quartzite, sandstone, shale, slate, cultured, etc., stucco, IFS, terrazzo, and tile, clay, ceramic, concrete, etc. Silica causes permanent lung damage that can be disabling and potentially lead to death. When workers inhale crystalline silica, the lung tissue reacts by developing fibrotic nodules and scarring around the trapped silica particles. If the nodules grow too large, breathing becomes difficult. Silica exposure can cause silicosis, and people with silicosis are also at a higher risk of developing tuberculosis. There is no cure for silicosis, but it is 100% preventable. The three types of silicosis are: chronic silicosis, which usually occurs after 10 or more years of exposure to crystalline silica at relatively low concentrations; accelerated silicosis, which results from exposure to high concentrations of crystalline silica and develops 5 to 10 years after the initial exposure; and acute silicosis, which occurs where exposure concentrations are the highest and can cause symptoms to develop within a few weeks to 4 or 5 years after the initial exposure. Silica and other dusts also cause COPD. COPD includes chronic bronchitis, emphysema, bronchiectasis, and chronic airway obstruction. In 2014, COPD ranked as the third leading cause of death in the U.S. with over 147,000 deaths. COPD is projected to become the third most common cause of death worldwide by 2020. Symptoms from both silicosis and COPD may not be obvious and can initially include shortness of breath, chest pain, or a persistent cough. Silicosis and COPD can be severe enough to cause respiratory failure, which may eventually lead to death. In addition, silica exposure has been linked to other illnesses including lung cancer and kidney disease. Controlling exposures to occupational hazards is the fundamental method of protecting workers. Traditionally, a hierarchy of controls has been used as a means of determining how best to implement feasible and effective controls. One application of the hierarchy of controls to RCS exposure can be summarized as follows. Elimination. Eliminate job tasks with risk of exposure. Substitution. Substitute non-crystalline silica materials for crystalline silica materials. Engineering controls. Use a control such as local exhaust ventilation or water spray to reduce concentrations of RCS in the air. Administrative controls. Limit time spent working with RCS, and/or limit worker access to areas of high RCS concentration. Personal protective equipment. Wear respirators when working with RCS. The idea behind this hierarchy is that the control methods at the top of a list are potentially more effective, protective, and economical, in the long run, than those at the bottom. Following the hierarchy normally leads to the implementation of inherently safer systems, ones where the risk of illness or injury has been substantially reduced. For more information about how to control the exposure of respirable crystalline silica, please refer to Section 39 of the MGCI Safety Manual. Thank you and be safe.